everyone. We're really excited to have Ginny Foz from Consumer Reports with us today. She's going to dive into her presentation, and then we'll have a moment for Q&A at the end. So please feel free to discuss things in the chat, add your questions, and then we'll take those after the presentation. So this session, we're running into 1:15 Eastern time, and then we'll be going into just more broadly a bit of networking, and then the next demo block starts at 2 p.m. Without further ado, I want to introduce Ginny here in her role as the Associate Director of Product R&D for Consumer Reports Digital Lab. Ginny Foz oversees a team working to build and launch innovative tools and services for digital consumer protection. Ginny leads Consumer Reports' efforts to pioneer new ways for consumers to take control of their data and digital lives. Her division drives innovation in consumer protection technology and brings new products and services to market. So Jenny, I'm going to hand it off to you to dive into your presentation. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And thanks everyone for attending the workshop. We have a bit of a funny setup here where I can't see many of you. So if you would be willing to just say hi in the chat or wave or put your name in the chat and let me know that you're here. I'm excited to see who's shown up and to show off some of the work that we're doing on Permission Slip, which is a product that's all about your data and how to exercise your data rights. And as Matt mentioned, I'm here from Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports is an independent nonprofit focused on consumer protection. We've been around for over 85 years fighting for the consumer. And you may have heard of Consumer Reports because of seeing the magazine on your grandparents' coffee table or seeing the magazine in the wild. But more than just a magazine, we're an organization that's here to fight for you. We're fighting for a fair, safe, just marketplace. And we're doing that across a number of different products and kind of areas of focus. But I'm really focused on data rights in my work. And our vision at Consumer Reports is that your data is your right. You have a right to your data. And today, I'm really excited to share with you all a product that my team and I are working on to make your data rights feel real. The product's called Permission Slip. And so we'll start out by giving a pitch of Permission Slip and what this product is. And then towards the end, explain ways you might be able to get involved in data rights and take some time for questions and answers too. So my bet is that everyone here spends more time on the internet than you care to admit. Let's be real. You're probably on the internet right now as I'm giving this talk, surfing around and flipping between tabs and looking at different websites. And it would not be completely uncommon when you visit a website to see something like this, that the website is going to need your consent. Like, okay, what does that mean? So you click in and then, ooh, it's like actually a bit complicated. There are a few kind of dials here. Is that toggle on or off? I don't know. So maybe you press it and then, oh my goodness, there are more dials that may be on and may be off. And what is this legitimate interest thing? So you press on that little question mark. Okay, how does legitimate interest work? Some vendors are not asking for your consent, but are using your personal data on the basis of their legitimate interest. Huh? What does that mean? And then you've probably seen things like this. We've updated our privacy policy and our cookie policy, and your only option is to say, I understand, but do you? Understandably, you are annoyed about privacy. What an annoying experience to every time you visit a new website, have to deal with all these dials not understand what they're doing. But you're also concerned about privacy. It's complicated. And you're not alone. 81% of Americans express concern about the data the platforms and websites about us. There's good reason to be concerned. Companies are using your data to analyze and profile you. They're using it to train your own algorithms, manipulate your beliefs or change what you think. They're stalking you across the internet with targeted ads. They're selling products. Some you may want, but you may not want. And then some companies are even using this data to discriminate and have a different price for the product for you versus for someone else. We know this. We know the companies are using our data in this way. 96% of Americans know that companies are tracking them when they browse online and move to different websites. You are not in control of your data. And the way that companies use your data is not just making the internet worse, it's making society worse. Maybe because of all of this concern and because of how aware we are of the ways that companies are using our data, we're increasingly voting for privacy. There's this law in California called the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. And when this law passed in 2018, it passed with 88% of California voters in favor and just 5% opposed. That's an astonishing amount of voters voting for privacy. And it's starting to happen in other states. Even just this year in 2021, Colorado and Virginia have passed their own consumer privacy laws. Since 2018, when the CCPA, that California privacy law, passed, we've seen the introduction of privacy legislation at the state level and the federal level over 100 times. And this tracker is showing just how many states are starting to consider privacy legislation. But let's get back to you on the internet. Let's say that you wanted on the internet to start to tell companies what they can do with your data. You wanted to use these new laws. You wanted to use the CCPA or this new law in Colorado when it comes into implementation in a few years' time to actually specify to companies how they are and are not allowed to use your data. What would happen is you would need to scroll to the bottom of a website. You would click on this button that says CCPA, the California privacy law. And then you would have to click on this other button after reading important considerations for opting out. You would see a form where you can insert some information to opt out. And then, oh, you need to prove that you're not a robot. Oh, and now you need to mark the traffic lights. Oh, but that's not good enough. Now you need to identify motorcycles. And then, whew, okay, thank you. You've submitted the request. Oh, but you actually now have received an email. You need to go check your email and verify that. Oh, look, here's the email. Okay, you click through. And then what? You need to prove you're not a robot again? This is so annoying. What's going on? Identify fire hydrant. Oh my God. Okay, finally, you have this reference number. You've told the company that they're not allowed to sell your data. But sheesh. Doing that took 5 minutes. And this isn't the only company that has your data. You would have to do this for every company who has your data. And when we did this with consumers, we saw that for most people, it's going to take 1 full-time week to tell companies how to manage your data. Needless to say, these laws, even though they exist, they're just really hard to use. And we know this because we have tried it. We are a member organization. We have 6 million consumer members across the United States. We went to our members in California and we said to them, hey, there's this new privacy law. Try exercising your rights. There are 543 consumers who worked with us to do this. And at the end of telling companies to stop selling their information, which again, is what the law says you're allowed to do, over half of them were dissatisfied. And unfortunately, a significant chunk of them weren't able to exercise their right at all. They got stuck in the process. Privacy is a right, but right now, the logistics and the process of actually doing privacy are just way too hard. And that's why we're building Permission Slip. Permission Slip is an app, and it's a phone app that's going to help you manage your data. This is what it looks like. You can use Permission Slip to learn about different companies. You can use it to see what sorts of data companies might have about you. And then when it's time to exercise your right, when it's time to tell a company, stop selling the data you have about me, or to tell a company, I want you to delete all my data from your database, you can just do that with a click. We're providing that for free with Permission Slip. It's going to be a free mobile app. But also this product is going to help you solve the biggest privacy problem you don't know you have. And that problem is data brokers. What's a data broker? Data brokers are these companies that scrape public records, scrape the internet, combine this online data that they find attached to you with offline data that they know about you. They combine it into profiles, and then they sell these profiles to advertisers. Here is a list of lots of common data brokers. This is just 50 or so. There are hundreds of these companies. And actually in Vermont, they need to be registered with the state. So you can look through a list of just how many of these companies there are. Have you ever heard of these companies? These companies are making money off of you. They're making money off of your data. And most of us don't even know they exist. Permission Slip is going to help address this problem. And we're going to do that by proactively, every month, reaching out to 20 companies on your behalf and telling those companies they have to stop selling your data. So you're not going to have to look up the data brokers and go through that terrible process I showed earlier. Permission Slip's just going to take care of it for you. You set it, you forget it. And we're offering this service at $5 a month. Why? So why are we talking about this? Why should I care about Permission Slip? The answer is because you are really important in helping us figure out how to make data rights real. And there are 4 ways that we need your help with that. We want you involved. The first way you can get involved is you can make sure that this is the law. As I said, there's a privacy law in California. Newly, these privacy laws have passed in Virginia and Colorado, but there are still 47 other states where there isn't any sort of privacy law right now. So if you are an activist or you are a lawyer and you care about helping people have more right to their data, please reach out. We would love to work with you. Another way you could get involved is if you're a technologist. A lot of what I do every day is help develop the technologies that are going to allow these data rights to be practical for everyday people like you and me to exercise. And so what that means is not just, having an app for consumers, but also developing the foundational technologies that are going to allow for secure exchange of data rights requests between consumers and companies and the agents that consumers choose to represent them, and other kind of privacy compliance companies that are helping the big companies process data rights requests. There are lots of parties at play, and good technologists are needed to help us figure out how to get these different sides of the marketplace talking to each other so that we can make data rights easy for people to use. Another way you can help is if you know how to build great products. I mentioned we're building this Permission Slip product, this mobile app for making data rights easier to use. But Permission Slip is the first of many products that we plan to build so that data rights are more real for people. So if you're a product designer, if you know UX, if you're a product manager, We'd love to work with you and show you our plans and hear how we can build even better products to make privacy easy for consumers. And finally, if you're none of those things, but you just care about data rights, you can share and evangelize this work. You can visit permissionslipcr.com right now. And on that website, you can sign up for Permission Slip. We're launching in private beta, just invitation only for those who sign up on our website in December. So in 2 months, you can start to test out this service. And we would really love to have you along for that. You can also keep up with us and what we're thinking about data rights on social media. Thanks for listening to the presentation. I'm excited to hear all your questions about data rights, and I hope you get in touch and reach out.
Thanks, Ginny, for a great presentation and overview of what you're working on at Permission Slip. So everyone, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we can kind of take those as a springboard for discussion about data rights and Permission Slip. So I guess one question that I'm curious about, Ginny, is, and let me just switch this view. So, okay, so we can see a bit better.
Yeah.
Is I'm wondering, just in the last week, we've heard so much about specifically social media platforms and Facebook, and learned a little bit more about what's going on there. I'm wondering if any of the new things that have come to light have sort of changed your view on, the need for something like Permission Slip, or sort of what's striking you about some of that news.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a big week of news on this topic, right? And Facebook has an unfathomable amount of data about us. They use that data in myriad ways, which have been exposed in the Facebook files and over the past weeks. I think something that a lot of folks like that isn't as clear about kind of Facebook's business model and how they do data is that Facebook is a big buyer of consumer data. So some of those data brokers who I listed on the slide, Facebook buys data from those brokers and uses that as context for how they target ads towards you. So a lot of their ad targeting is about your own activity on the platform, but a lot of what they know about us as well is data they purchase about us. And so a common question we get with Permission Slip is, oh, could I use Permission Slip to tell Facebook to stop selling my data? And the answer is, I mean, you could, but Facebook actually isn't selling your data. They're an advertiser. So they are collecting data and using that to inform their product. And that's why they have such a sophisticated advertising product. But telling Facebook to stop selling your data actually isn't going to solve the problem. The way you solve the problem is by going upstream and going to the data brokers who are selling data to Facebook and telling those people they're not allowed to sell your data, or they have to delete your data from the database. And by telling those data brokers that they're not allowed to sell your data, Facebook is going to have less contextual data about you. And that's why I mentioned how we have this paid tier of Permission Slip, which goes to data brokers for you and proactively tells these companies that they're not allowed to sell your information. And the reason why we do that is because most people haven't heard of these companies, right? Data brokers aren't household names. And so when we are able to put together a kind of set it and forget it approach where data brokers are a problem, but you don't want to have to think about it any more than that, then we're going to do the hard work of privacy for you, going to those companies and making it such that big advertisers like Facebook have less data about you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I see we've got a question from Chris in the chat. I want to ask Ginny one quick follow-up on what you were talking about, though, before we get to that one. I mean, for me, hearing your presentation, I feel like I'm vaguely aware of data brokers. I definitely learned a lot more just in the few minutes you were talking about it, and seeing that list of names. You're right. It's companies that I've never heard of before. So I was kind of thinking, like, with the history of consumer reports, talking about what products are good, what products are safe. I feel like in the past, that's sort of easy to comprehend. It's like, okay, is this, high chair going to be safe for my kid or not? And that's kind of clear.
Hmm.
Once we're getting into the world of data privacy, I think for me and many consumers, people don't even know what safe really means, and there's like a bit of education that needs to happen. Like people
Right.
might not be aware of what a data broker is, how they work. So I feel like permission slip does a lot to let people sort of have control over their privacy, but I'm wondering sort of what you think needs to happen for just there to be a broader public awareness of like what data privacy is, what data safety might be, if that term even makes sense. So what needs
Yeah.
to happen there?
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems in the data privacy space is a storytelling problem, right? Like, who is telling these stories well? Who even knows how the data economy works? Most of us don't. And it's a highly technical area. There are a lot of layers of the puzzle. There are a lot of technologies at play. So it can be really challenging to wrap your mind around what data privacy even means or what it would mean for you. A lot of what we're trying to do with permission slip is have some of that education just built into the way the product works. So I showed one of the screens in my presentation where you'll see a company it's like a stack of cards, and each card is a different company. And facetiously, we've kind of modeled this a bit like dating apps, where you can swipe right and swipe left on companies based on whether or not you want them to have your data. But for each company, we're letting you click in, and you're going to be able to see what our company's data practices, what sorts of organizations might they be selling this data to, what are the impacts to you as an individual if you choose to tell them to stop selling data or to delete your data. There are some companies, like companies that have great loyalty programs. Think about like airlines with frequent flyer miles, or Subway sandwiches where every 10th sandwich is free. Like, for those loyalty programs, you may not want to delete your data from a company's database, because then you're not going to get to use your frequent flyer points, or you're not going to get your 10th sandwich free. Like, you actually, as a consumer, get a benefit to those companies having your data. And so in the app, we're hoping to educate people around the companies that are using data in a way that is really in the consumer's best interest, versus using it in ways that may not be aligned with the consumer's expectations when they sign up for that product or service. And so that education piece is a key part of what we hope to do in the app, and how we plan to move the marketplace on data privacy.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like and I feel like that sort of Tinder model is one that we're many people are very familiar with at this point. So that seems like a good sort of UI thing. Cool. I want to so a few questions here. One, first from Chris, wondering about sort of the whether or not permission slip will be open source, and also wondering sort of a follow up about sort of the software app itself, how permission slip handles, and what policies and protections permission slip has around data privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to the first question about open source. We are building permission slip on top of a lot of open source technologies that our lab is developing concurrently. So we have like the provision that makes permission slip work is this provision within the CCPA law called authorized agent. And this authorized agent provision basically says a consumer can choose an agent, someone else, to help them exercise their privacy rights. So we've built some open source apps that are onboardings for authorized agents, so that kind of any organization anywhere could choose to set up an authorized agent and let start to represent consumers' data rights to companies. So that's a part of our stack that's open source. We're also working on a protocol for exchanging these data rights requests. So this protocol would specify exactly the pieces of information that need to be passed between consumers and companies when we're sending and receiving data rights requests. And that's a part of our stack that is fully open source. Generally, we hope that permission slip will blossom into being an open source project. And we're starting out with just having these open source pieces. But our vision is very much having this be an open collaboration and be a tool for the community. I'll mention as well that a lot of the content that's going to power permission slips, so what I was just talking about as far as the companies, a description of their data practices, a description of what might happen if you opt out or delete your data. That's also some information that we plan to make available open source for the community, so that it can be of use to other companies, agents, nonprofits, consumers who are interested in this area. And then to the question about privacy policy in terms of service, we are creating a privacy policy terms of service that are specific to permission slips. So it's going to be a completely different kind of paradigm than even what folks know of Consumer Reports and other organizations. So that's something we're putting a lot of time and thought into right now, and is going to be a key part of the product, is making sure that we're not using activity in the product to target ads back at you or things like that. It's going to be much more customized and focused on ensuring the user's privacy.
Great. And another question from the chat, kind of following up on that example you gave of moments that consumers may want to opt in to letting some of these companies sort of have their data or retain kind of information about them. Steve's wondering if you have, kind of where this might go with what companies are allowed to do with that data. Like, are they allowed to, kind of say, okay, in order to be in our loyalty program, opt in, but then take that info, sell it to a data broker, do other things with it? Sort of once someone has your data, what can they do with it? Is that something we have any kind of leverage over as consumers?
It's challenging, right? So, I mean, every company defines in their privacy policy in terms of service how they are going to be using your data. And for most companies, there are trade-offs. Like, maybe you want the loyalty program, but you don't want them using your data to train AI algorithms or something like that. Right now, the data rights that exist under the CCPA, the California Privacy Law, and also emerging privacy laws aren't so specific to be able to nail down like internal uses of data, but the rights that we do have are the rights to, one, request a copy of the data a company has about you, so you know what they know. Two, to tell a company they're not allowed to sell that data to others. And then three, to tell a company they must delete your data from the database. So those are the fundamental rights that we aim to support with permission slip. And at the end of the day, like, every individual is going to have to choose what trade-offs are worth it to them and not with their data. And we hope that the app can kind of simplify that decision and provide proper education and transparency so folks know what they're choosing between when they make these requests to companies. But it is something that is a more individual decision.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. So with CCPA, that's kind of a first of its kind, and you said 88% of the people in California were supportive of that. It seems like there's a lot of demand just for your average citizen for this type of thing. I think people know that this type of legislation is really valuable. Can you talk about a little more broadly what's happening on like a legislative level? Is there movement? Is this starting to be recognized in different states at the federal level and starting to turn into law? And also, is that the only place that we need change to happen, or is there something that needs to happen kind of in the nonprofit or business world as well to kind of get to where we need to be with data privacy?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question, and there's a lot happening. I showed a slide in the presentation, and I can try to pull it up again, of kind of the privacy legislation tracker. So you can see kind of a color-coded version of exactly where we are as far as state progress on privacy. Let me just put that visual up here as I speak so folks have an idea. Here we go. So there has been a lot of movement. The policies have only been signed and made into law in 3 states, but there's traction in Washington and Oklahoma and Florida, in Nevada, many states, there is traction. I'll say too that one overlooked piece of this is that from a company's perspective, a company is going to have to implement these laws. And from where the company sits, it's easier to implement kind of one set of privacy laws and serve all users with that same expectation than it is to implement 50 different state by state privacy paradigms and then look at the state that the consumer's in and what if they're sending the request from a state where they don't have an address, or there's just a lot of complication. And so from a company side, what we're actually seeing is that companies are often willing to honor the CCPA even for consumers outside of California. And that's really exciting because it means that even if this is a state-by-state process that's going to take a while, many of us can use some of these data rights today just because they exist in California. And so a lot of the theory of permission slip is using these California laws as kind of the mechanism by which we're able to do this work. But we do plan to offer the product nationwide because we're going to be able to select for companies who honor these requests for any American and not just Californians. I'll say too, Matt, to the second part of your question about kind of what else needs to happen to make this real. Technology needs to happen to make this real. As I was saying, the laws exist. The laws are hard to use. Normal people like you and I are not going to be taking a full work week out of our lives to manage our data with companies one by one by one by one. And it's funny, like an analogy here is that we have the right to connect, but we don't have HTTP. It's like Tim Berners-Lee in 1992, before HTTP was a thing, right? And the internet exists, but how do you access it as a normal person? And there's a similar analogy at play here for where we are with data rights. Like the data rights exist, but what is the technology that's going to allow us to actually use them? And when I spoke earlier about this protocol initiative we're working on, we're calling it the Data Rights Protocol. But essentially, the Data Rights Protocol is trying to be the HTTP for privacy, and trying to be a technology that makes it very easy for any consumer, company, privacy infrastructure provider, authorized agent, anyone who's dealing with privacy requests to connect and actually engage in and exchange requests in a standard way. And so I think some of what's so exciting about the work we're doing is we are building the technology that's going to make these laws real. And that's an important piece of making privacy part of our lives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And building on that, where do you see this going in sort of the next 5 to 10 years? I think both with what's like the path you'd love to see for permission slip, and what do you also kind of see changing, or what are some of the kind of key milestones in the data privacy landscape more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it cannot be emphasized enough that the CCPA, which exists right now, is a huge step forward. This is one of the biggest things to happen in privacy and technology in my lifetime, my parents' lifetimes. Like it's a huge deal to even have a law that allows us to start to think about this. But as far as what the roadmap looks like right now, we are building a product that makes it easy to do what is possible under existing law. But I think what actually becomes a more interesting or compelling question is not just, how do I tell companies to stop selling my data, but it's how can the data that companies have be of more use to me? Of course, companies use data to make their products better, to train AI, to personalize your experience, et cetera. So there are a lot of ways that companies are using data to make consumers' lives better. But there are also insights that are hidden in consumer data that companies have access to, and we as consumers don't. And so where I think this gets really exciting in a much longer term way, you could see permission slip becoming a piece of this puzzle where we allow you not only to access your data from companies, so you're getting a copy of the information a company has about you, but what if we could then allow you to donate that and pool that data with other consumer data, and we could do some kind of anonymized analysis on it to help you better understand, like, are you getting a bad deal? Are you being price discriminated against? What does your data say in the context of all of the data of folks who do business with this company? And I think that's where we start to have some really exciting applications. There are a lot of applications for that for research purposes, for investigative journalism, and even just as an everyday person for better understanding how you're being treated by companies and having a more fair marketplace that you're participating in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you see also like the some of the big sort of like mobile device providers like Apple or the on the Android OS? I mean, is there an opportunity for them to kind of make offerings that might have some similar capabilities as something like permission slip and sort of just scale up some of the tech that's needed on the consumer side in that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an opportunity. We're already seeing Apple doing some of that, and we think that's great. More privacy products, more privacy services, more privacy awareness from businesses, and having consumers choosing brands because of privacy is something we want to see more of. I'll say though, at the end of the day, I think it boils down to like, who are you willing to trust? Like, are you as a consumer really fully trusting Apple with all of your data? Apple's a private company. Apple needs to meet growth goals. Apple needs to outperform themselves every quarter to keep a good stock price. Apple has, they're under a corporate incentive structure where they need to be optimizing to continually profit off of the devices they sell and the data they have, versus a nonprofit consumer advocate that is not in a growth at all costs incentive structure. Like, how do you feel about those two parties being the two options you're weighing when you think about how you want to manage your data? And so I think we can and will absolutely see big companies take more action on this, and I'm excited about that. But I also think there need to be spaces that are non-corporate spaces where consumers have good, reliable, trustworthy tools to manage their data. And that's the product that we're building right now, and who we hope to be in this industry.
Great, great. And I've got a question for my colleague, Erica Matsumoto. Obviously, permission slip's going to be a great tool that's launching very soon, but wondering just what's in your toolkit now as far as, do you have any preferred search engines, browsers, things like that you think are really good starting places for people who want to be kind of more aware of their data privacy, maybe be, a little more able to manage things? Do you have any recommendations there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are lots of different types of products and tools out there, from password managers to ad blockers to secure browsers, search engines. Like, there are tons of services. Consumer Reports has reviewed a lot of them. So I would encourage folks to look at our official reviews, which have kind of a much more rigorous kind of product testing process, as well as like strong descriptions of the trade-offs of some of these products. But I do think that using privacy products is an important part of keeping one's data safe. And so making sure that VPN, password manager, et cetera, are part of your toolkit, I think is going to go a long way for securing and locking down your data. I'll say too that there is a Consumer Reports product called Security Planner. And Security Planner is a tool that is a little walkthrough experience that it creates a personalized guide for you to stay safe online. And I always recommend that as a great starting point for folks who know that they want to do more but don't really know what that looks like. Security Planner has a lot of kind of easy, low-hanging fruit to just lock down your devices and be a bit more proactive about your data privacy.
Oh, cool. All right. I think I need to do this. I just found the link. I'm gonna paste it in our chat here. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Ginny, for a really informative look at data privacy, and also for sort of this preview of where things are going with permission slip. I'm really excited about that. Do you want to sort of remind people again where they can go to keep up with that project? I can pop up your
Yeah,
slides again
absolutely.
if
So
that's useful.
I don't know if you all are able to see my slides right now.
Let's see. Here we
They're
go.
back?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So if you are interested in permission slip, you can visit our website, which is permissionslipcr.com. We're also on social media on Twitter and Instagram, so you can keep on top of what we're working on and what we're thinking about there. And then again, if you are a lawyer, an activist, a policy expert, a technologist, a product person, or if you're just interested in data rights and you want to plug in with the work we're doing or just learn more about it and start a dialogue, we would absolutely love to get to know you and collaborate with you to make this come to life.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Ginny. This is really wonderful. So I want to